let's give this another shot, guys. No pun intended. Welcome to the channel. This is my first YouTube video, therefore my first voiceover. Actually, this is my not first attempt at doing the voiceover. So this video is for the process of making the little green dwarf miniature guy and his accompanying digital portrait. I think the miniature I used was called, from the brand Noelsaurus Marvelous Miniatures, Wave 1 Dwarf Fighter Male, I believe. I'm gonna talk a little bit about the materials I used for painting this miniature. It was really low budget. I've not been painting miniatures for long. I have painted a lot of them, but not very high tech, very complicated. Right now I'm just using craft acrylic paint. I believe the brand was Apple Barrel. I use a Stay Wet palette, which was a new addition and very nice because in miniature painting you're going to find yourself going over a lot of previously painted areas just to clean up the lines, and when your color dries out on your palette, that's really a bummer when you got to color match it again in your mixing. And also I used a layer of Mod Podge at the end to seal in the paint. So if I had to describe my miniature painting process, it's probably just phase 1, cover the entire figure from like in and out to out. So I would start with the inner layer of color first. That would be like the skin, the things that like peeks out through everything else. And then going from in to out, I will cover the whole figure, not worrying too much about keeping the edges clean, especially when there's going to be like details or like overlapping objects that's going to cover the edges. And then I, just paint on the details and clean it up. I think I should probably actually look into getting better about my technique. I see people painting on YouTube and it's like really clean, really organized, and at least for this project I remember just trying to keep my hand in the camera, so turns out you actually cannot move your anchoring hand at all, or else it will no longer be in the camera. That's something I really had to get used to. I remember when I was starting the project, I was already thinking a little bit about what the final portrait I wanted it to look like. And I kind of wanted to have some foliage and greenery in there. And I wanted the color scheme to be cohesive, so I thought that green dwarf would be the shortest way quickest way or easiest way to get it to look cohesive. I am trying to do more diverse and complicated color palettes on my miniatures. If you look at my current collection, they're mainly all either monochrome, or there's maybe one main color and one accent color. I'm thinking in the future I want to mess with some gradients. I think that'd be really cool. And so now you can see me just showing off the finished figure. Not super great, but good enough. That's what I said to myself. Okay, so now to the part in the video where I am doing my color thumbnail. for the illustration that I have planned. And there's actually a step that I did not record before starting the color thumbnail, which is a traditional black and white sketch. So each of these parts of the process do like establish important information for the final image. The traditional drawing that I did, it helped me establish the pose, the lighting scheme, as well as like overall what sort of value relationships I'm gonna have in the image. Like for example, I decided that I wanted to have like a darker character with a lighter background and darker foreground elements. And now during this color thumbnailing process, I am trying to establish the mood and the color scheme. And also I have to work on like the background a little bit more. I find that backgrounds are easier to do when you're working digitally or in color. I don't particularly like doing landscapes traditionally or in black and white using like pencils. And here I remember during the color thumbnailing process, it's really chaotic because it's more about exploration than like polish. Your brushstrokes are all over the place. You kind of just throw on a colorful light onto the figure and just like barely make it clean enough to read. See that I actually randomly added in the helmet of the dwarf in the middle to see if that would improve the composition. I think in the end I decided that I didn't like it there. So a little bit first about how I started this final drawing. I normally like to put in the background first. And normally that's just, a base color. I put a screen layer like to lighten up where like the horizon is, and then like a small darkening effect near the top, and that was just the entire background. But it's important to do this so that you have that color information in that's gonna influence the figure, and like skin tone color, the hair color, and all that. And then I start with the biggest forms. Like here you see I'm working on the green like padded jacket. I think about how this entire form is shaped. It's kind of shaped like a cylinder, and then decide how the value is going to change to reflect that form. Like for example, I'm going to make the sides of him, the sides of the jacket, lighter to be like a basic cylinder lit from behind. And this exact process is works for more complicated forms as well. For example, the beard is also like a large cylinder with two smaller cylinders on top of it. And what was important is like you don't want the value differences for like the smaller cylinders to overpower that bigger cylinder representing the entire beard, or else it's not going to read well. It's not going to read correctly. And I also know that his shoulder pad that's facing the light is going to cause the midsection of the beard to be cast in shadow. And that's like, if you think about it in simpler forms, it's just like if the object was casting a shadow onto the cylinder that's backlit, or here it's not backlit, it's lit from the side. Yeah, this entire process of painting the figure was just trying to think about each part in its basic form. put that in as cleanly as possible for this final drawing. I'm thinking about the form first, and then we're not quite at that part yet, but once the entire canvas is, covered in paint, digital paint, once the entire figure is blocked in its basic forms, then I'm going to do a texture pass where I put in like the details, and I worry more about like things looking like the material that they're supposed to be. When I started painting digitally, I think one of the biggest struggles that I had was trying to find this process that would get me the results that I wanted. The final polish, the level of detail realism that I wanted. And in the beginning, I thought, because it's a digital medium and everyone says that there's like a bunch of shortcuts and it's supposed to be easier than like traditional painting using like acrylics and oils, I thought that meant that I didn't have to be as aware of like forms and values and what lighting scenarios look like. Pretty much that I could get away with making less judgments just by, programmatically, algorithmically, like putting on a multiply layer that's going to, do all the color conversions for me, all the value conversions for me. But I've been looking at the digital process of like some of my favorite painters. Like currently my favorite painters are just all the painters for Wizards of the Coast, which owns Dungeons and Dragons and Magic the Gathering. And I found Cynthia Shepard's art channel, and she's an art director at Magic, and she was going through her digital process and explaining how it's not all that different from her oil process. I'm actually gonna put links in the description for the series of videos she made about her digital workflow. I think I learned so much from those videos, and they're things that I constantly go back to as like a great reference. And that's when I realized that I really needed to go back to my fundamentals. Okay, I think by now we are at the point where I have started the texture pass. So this pass is something that I always struggle with. I know as an artist, I really suck at rendering materials, and thinking maybe like a future video could be about me doing material studies and how to improve that part. But yeah, like metals intimidate me, cloth intimidate me, hair intimidates me, like getting all those textures correct is something that I definitely still need to study. I chose now to put out this video because I've been having a lot more free time in this current climate, and my current daily schedule looks a bit like I wake up early in the mornings, just with the sunlight, trying to get like as much sunlight as possible. I do a couple hours of painting before I start work, and then after work, I like chill with some friends, and then after dinner, before I go to bed, I get like another couple of hours of like art and I guess I should talk a little bit about what I want to do going forward on this channel, or why I have this channel. I think, first of all, I want it as a place for me to, pursue bigger projects and do it more seriously. I always have a problem of, getting to a certain point in the project and deciding that I've learned what I could from it and like never really putting in the effort to do a final polish. And sometimes I learn a lot during that process of doing the final polish, and it really points out to me that, there's things that I lack or abilities that I lack in that final polishing process that I actually don't have, and I need to, figure out a way to gain that. Also think that I'll do more videos like this one. I really enjoy the process of building a portrait from a miniature. Hopefully my friends will be willing to be models for some of my future videos. But also, I think that there needs to be like set reasonable expectations for how often I'm going to be posting these sort of videos. Just to talk a little bit about the amount of time that went into this, I believe it was about 2.5 hours to paint the miniature and record that process. I would say about 2 hours for the traditional composition, and maybe like 3 or 4 hours for the color thumbnail. And the final, illustration couldn't have taken less than like 10 hours at least. And then editing this video took me most of my Saturday morning, a little bit into the afternoon, but also doing this on Lightworks, and I've never used Lightworks before. So I will try, maybe, feel nervous saying this already, but try maybe getting one of these out like every other week. And maybe I'll throw in like videos of doing like exercises or studies on the weeks that I don't post. Of course, as history has shown, that might not happen, but I will try my best because I really enjoyed the process, every part of this process, honestly. And I really want to, make this a regular thing. I am not quite sure what I'm gonna post next, but if you are watching this video and have specific requests, art related, for me to do, or specific questions that you want answered, would be interesting to hear about those. So that's the end of the time lapse. I'm going to throw up a picture of the miniature and the painting side by side. And thanks for watching, guys.